This is Arab Talk on KPOO in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Ghannam.
And this is Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, we have a really exciting show today. We're going to be covering everything from cybersecurity to Saudi Arabia to the general Middle East and probably end up on impeachment. So we got a lot to talk about. But the biggest news that we're going to start with today has to do with the breaking news just in the last 24 hours in which Twitter announced that it had essentially found out some 3 years ago that 3 Saudi nationals had infiltrated Twitter, become employees, and were spying for the Saudi kingdom, presumably for MBS, and were spying on alleged or so-called or potential critics of the Saudi government. Apparently, these two in particular here in San Francisco, one back in Saudi Arabia, Saudi nationals were privy and had access to individual Twitter accounts and were able to locate names, IP addresses, and all sorts of personal information about people who were considered by the Saudi government to be negatively inclined or writing negative stories. What's even worse, Jamal, about these 2 Twitter employees? They were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by a Saudi middleman to infiltrate Twitter. And, in my mind, having Saudi spies in San Francisco for one of the biggest, internet companies is really a big story, Jamal.
Well, it's also, this is Donald Trump's favorite platform.
His favorite medium, that's right.
Exactly. So here is the details about the story, Jess. Ali Al-Zabara was an engineer who rose through the ranks of Twitter to a job that gave him access to personal information, account data, emails, social media, and millions and millions of users. That's the number one spy. The other one is Ahmed Abu Ammo, who was a media partnership manager at the company, who could also see the email addresses and phone numbers of the Twitter accounts. So yesterday, the story, as you've mentioned, is breaking news, really. On Wednesday, the Justice Department accused the 2 men of using their positions and their access to Twitter accounts and internal systems to aid Saudi Arabia by obtaining information on American citizens and Saudi dissidents who oppose the policies of the kingdom and its leaders. The 2 men, Al-Zabara and Abu Ammo, were charged with acting as agents of a foreign power inside the United States. And this is, by the way, the first complaint of its kind involving Saudis in the country. So the case, of course, has the questions about security at Twitter, at Facebook, at these American technology companies who are under scrutiny for spreading disinformation and influencing public opinions, showing that these firms can be penetrated from within and are vulnerable. I mean, the Saudis is the latest example. We have issues also with Israeli agents. We have issues with the Chinese and with the Russians. Right. So this one. So again, this underscored the broad effort that the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, otherwise known as MBS, of Saudi Arabia, and his close advisors have conducted all these operations to silence critics both inside the kingdom and abroad. And this also comes, it's kind of coincides with what happened to the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who worked for the Washington Post. And
That's
of course,
right.
we know his story. We discussed the story and his murder last year by Saudi agents in Istanbul. And Khashoggi, of course, had a Twitter account. He had a lot of followers. So a lot of his information, his movement, etc., was always posted on Twitter. So what's the connection also with having access, not just the public access, but also his phone number, for example. So,
Right.
so you could
Track
him on by his cell phone.
Right.
Most people use their cell phones for Twitter accounts, etc. And at the same time, we know for a fact this is just the internal. So this is the internal component of the story. Then we know for a fact that Twitter. So the agents and bots harass critics on Twitter,
all the time.
on Facebook. It's, by the way, Twitter has risen to be very popular platform in Saudi Arabia since the Arab Spring uprisings began in 2010. And now we're finding about this now. This is 2019. Just to be clear, both Mr. Al-Zabara and Mr. Abu Ammo left Twitter in 2015.
Well, this is a part of the story that I think we should focus on a little bit, Jamal. The fact that, and I think it's Al-Jabara, was confronted in 2015 by his supervisors at Twitter. In other words, he was caught. He left work that day. The next day, Jamal, he was on a one-way flight to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So there's so many components to this story that are damaging. If Twitter knew, why didn't they say anything? If this was going on for the extent that it did, why did it take 4 years? What has been, because the Khashoggi murder just happened a year ago, Jamal, and these guys were instrumental as far back as 2015.
Well, actually, even earlier, 2014, because according to communications between Twitter employees, right, this started in 2014. And also, just to mention, in addition to Al-Zabara and Abu Ammo, federal prosecutors charged Ahmed Al-Muteri.
Yeah, he's the third.
Who previously ran a social media marketing company that did work directly for the Saudi royal family.
I think he was the one that was paying these guys.
He and Mr. Al-Zabara are Saudi citizens.
Yeah.
And Mr. Abu Ammo is an American citizen, according to the complaint filed by prosecutors. And by the way, the story that there were that the Twitter or investigators at Twitter had suspicion about the activities of these two employees. This story was initially kind of some details about the investigation was reported on the Washington Post, and kind of, I would say, flew below radar. So
obviously, it flew below the radar.
It wasn't a big story. Nevertheless, now we have an investigation. So according to the court documents, the Saudi official who developed the Twitter employees, guess what, Jess? He was Secretary General of a charitable organization owned by a member of the Saudi royal family.
Of course.
So that description pointed to the MISK Foundation, M-I-S-K Foundation, a technology-focused non-profit organization founded by Prince Mohammed. MISK is also led by Badr al-Asakir, whose title is Secretary General. A person familiar with the case said Mr. al-Asakir is the foreign official who reached out to the Twitter employees. Reached out, I would say recruited, basically, those Twitter employees. So it runs very deep and very deep in the royal family itself and MBS.
Well, wouldn't it be fair to say, Jamal, that this is part of a consistent pattern of the royal family and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia silencing its critics, undermining its critics, and tragically, in one case, assassinating, murdering, and killing one of its foremost critics? What's really damaging about this story which we think is important to follow here on Arab Talk, is the fact that they co-opted an American San Francisco-based internet company that has international reach, and as you said in the beginning, is the medium of choice for the President of the United States. It doesn't stop at Twitter, Jamal.
No. Check this out, Jess. So Mr. Abu Ammo, he rose suspicion because he was checking out users' emails, phone numbers. This is according to the complaint. He later got the email addresses and phone numbers of other Saudi critics. He was like targeting Saudi critics, according to the complaint. And then when he came under scrutiny, he left the country and went to Saudi Arabia. The Saudi government compensated Mr. Abu Ammo for his work in a series of wire transfers to him and to other members of his family. And so he created a phony or shadow, whatever you want to call it.
Shell company,
limited liability company. Very smart guy, LLC, I guess.
But what he's not telling you...
where he received
$300,000
from the Saudi government.
Right. And to just scratch a little bit more on that story, Jamal, he received $300,000. He created fake invoices for fake work that he did to kind of circumvent with the IRS. But the point being, this is a huge expose, if you will, and huge kind of attack on the sovereignty of the U.S.-based internet companies to service its clients. It basically means that there are probably, not just at Facebook, but Facebook, Google, Twitter, there are probably paid agents. It wouldn't be unreasonable to conclude, Jamal, that there are paid agents of multiple countries working at these agencies and potentially creating these security risks. I think this is a huge story.
Of course, it's just, we can talk about it for the entire hour. Of course, we're not going to talk about it for an entire hour, but there are also more details, yes, I just like to our listeners and our viewers to be aware of. I mean, it didn't stop there, right? So this guy, Mr. Ba'ammo, comes back now after he went to Saudi Arabia. He kind of he was suspect. Twitter couldn't kind of like point the finger directly at him. They were very suspicious of his activities. He goes back to Saudi Arabia. He's compensated. Comes back. And where does he turn in?
Facebook.
Amazon. He comes back to Seattle. And this is very important. I tell you why. Because connect the dots with Jeff Bezos' latest scandal for extramarital affairs, you know. So he moves to Seattle for a marketing job at Amazon. Leaves the company after 1 year. This is according to an Amazon spokesman. When an FBI agent interviewed him in 2018, he lied to the agent and produced false documents. The complaint said like he's never been there. And the reason I mentioned this because of the Amazon thing. Then I was looking at this older article.
Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Let's keep that in mind. Jamal Khashoggi worked for the Washington Post. So we're connecting the dots.
So Jeff Bezos, and this goes back to March of this year, Jess.
Right.
And the security chief for Jeff Bezos, chief executive of Amazon, said that the Saudi government had access to Bezos' phone and gained private information from it. I mean, is that a coincidence? All of a sudden now, someone who was spying, he was a plant at Twitter, embedded, leaves, goes to Seattle, is now connected with Amazon, and then a couple of years later, we have now an announcement by Amazon's chief security officer saying that the Saudis hacked Amazon's boss Jeff Bezos' phone, and then this is the guy's name. His name is Gavin the Becker, Bezos' longtime security consultant, said that he had concluded his investigation into the publication in January of this year of leaked text messages between Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, a former television anchor whom the U.S. National Enquirer tabloid newspaper said Bezos was dating. And this is at the time, shortly before their publications, Bezos had become the subject of tabloid stories after he and his wife Mackenzie announced they were divorcing. And all of a sudden, these pictures make their way to the tabloids, to the Enquirer. And these pictures were on his personal phone.
Okay, can I just, I want to add a few things as long as we're doing the deep dive. Why would the Saudis come after Jeff Bezos? One of the reasons the Saudis would come after Jeff Bezos is because he owns the Washington Post. And the Washington Post was doing its own investigation of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi and were highly critical of MBS, highly critical of the Trump administration's relationship with Saudi Arabia and MBS. So the Post itself was doing its investigative reporting to expose this kind of behavior of the Saudis infiltrating and influencing major internet companies. There is, however, another issue, Jamal, that we need to add.
Before you get to that, I just want to give our listeners the quote because you're absolutely correct. And these are the words coming out of the mouth of the Becker, who's the Jeff Bezos security consultant. This is what he said. Quoting, "Some Americans will be surprised to learn that the Saudi government has been very intent on harming Jeff Bezos since last October when the Post began its relentless coverage of Khashoggi's murder."
That's right.
So he says that this is the security consultant who investigated this. And of course, we know that the CIA has concluded that Khashoggi's murder was probably ordered by the powerful Crown Prince MBS Mohammed bin Salman. And then it goes on. Of course, the Saudi Arabia denies this, right? They say, despite the false and unsubstantiated claims of Mr. De Becker, American media has and continues to refute, blah, 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 blah. This is coming from this. So how did they receive these pictures?
Well, there's another story here, Jamal, which we need to let our listeners know about. Saudi Arabia, as it turns out, had purchased among the most secretive hacking software from an Israeli firm, Black Cube, that was the only software that was able to monitor, crack, and decrypt WhatsApp messages. And lo and behold, when Black Cube sold this to a number of states, they knew that they were selling this to bad actor states who were using it to spy and ultimately harm and in some cases kill opposition leaders. So there's another angle to this. Of course, the Israelis are involved in this. The Israelis sold the software to the Saudis, who used that software to come after Jamal Khashoggi. And I'm just speculating, Jamal, so I have no proof for this, none whatsoever, but there may be a link to how the Saudis were able to also crack Jeff Bezos' phone. Now, Jeff Bezos is the second wealthiest, if not the wealthiest person in the world, depending on Amazon stock. He has the highest security. To be cracked and to be hacked in this way, it's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal. And then it also goes deeper into this just because before this, Amazon and Saudi Arabia looked like the perfect partners. I mean, look at it, just go back to 2018, a year before. Both had ambitions to become the most prominent players in the global economy. The world's biggest store and the world's second biggest oil producer moved aggressively in the past few years toward a $1 billion deal to build Amazon data centers in Saudi Arabia.
Oops.
Yep.
Oops.
And there was supposed to happen a major conference to announce this partnership between MBS and Jeff Bezos. So guess who was no show?
Well, Jeff Bezos completely shut it down.
So this is the crazy thing about it because of this whole thing. I mean, they screwed up big time, Saudi Arabia, MBS, by killing Jamal Khashoggi, kind of like, and of course, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and for the Washington Post to aggressively pursue
The story.
they had a $1 billion, this is actually the seed money
Right.
deal. And not only this, but also Amazon was supposed to have its cloud services,
Servers, yeah.
servers, and whatever. They had also another deal
Right.
to make it access to provide access to the Saudi government. They canceled that deal as well.
Yeah. Well, I think this should help our listeners understand the broad reach of how other countries infiltrate the United States, infiltrate digital companies, infiltrate what are supposed to be, secure communications, whether it's Facebook, which is not secure, Twitter, which clearly is not secure, and other media, Jamal. This dovetails on what happened during the 2016 and the Russian influence campaign and bot campaign using Facebook and Twitter to influence the elections of 2016. So the take-home message is it's not just Russia. Saudi Arabia is a big player, and then behind the scenes selling the software, we have to look at the Israelis. This story, Jamal, is going
Which, by the way, the software and the Israelis and Black Cube, you also can connect it to the Epstein.
You're right.
You could connect it to Weinstein. They were used to spy and intimidate the accusers.
Same
Connection in a way, in a different way. But like I said, this is, the more you read about it, I've been reading about it for the past 3 days.
It gets worse.
It gets worse because first, you see the Khashoggi connection, you see the Twitter connection, you see the work at Amazon, you see the partnership between the kingdom and Amazon, which would have looked, like I said, everybody was drooling over this deal. They were going to give them access to their cloud services. They were going to give them access, basically start setting up, many Amazon
servers and
centers right in Saudi Arabia. And this all got jeopardized because of the murder of Khashoggi. And then they turned their attention to Jeff Bezos. This is I would say, of course, this is at the state level, but it's almost also like the mafia because they were shaking Jeff Bezos, basically.
They were.
Blackmailing him.
They were trying to blackmail him. Exactly.
You're going to pursue Khashoggi. We're going to put all these emails and pictures of you and your lover, and publish them on the National Enquirer.
Well, I have to give Bezos some credit, even though he's a very problematic figure. He refused to be extorted. He refused to be shaken down. Those pictures and those emails were, in fact, published in the National Enquirer, and they were published, in other places. The Washington Post never backed down. Jeff Bezos never backed down. So, credit where credit is due. Saudi Arabia, Jamal, I want to change it just a small bit, was also in the news this week. The United States Congress, both the Senate and the House, passed a resolution saying that they didn't want any more U.S. military assistance going to Saudi Arabia for the complete and utter destruction of Yemen. So last week we found out that there was a secret shipment of U.S. military arms again to Saudi Arabia to help service the brutal, catastrophic murder of people in Yemen and the destruction of infrastructure in Yemen. This story got nowhere, Jamal. No one is reporting this story. No one's talking about the story that the Trump administration continues to fly in the face of the House. And let's just say, Jamal, Democrats and Republicans both saying, we don't want you to send arms to Saudi Arabia anymore. And guess where the U.S. was sending arms last week? In a secret flight to Saudi Arabia. All these weaponry to continue this kind of human disaster, this kind of utterly disastrous, catastrophic murder and destruction in Yemen. It's still going on.
Well, I mean, look, it's very clear. Donald Trump made it very clear that he is not going to throw Saudi Arabia under the bus.
No.
Even during the height of the investigation of
He
the
denied it.
murder
Yeah,
of
he denied
Khashoggi, he's not going to stop partnering with Saudi Arabia. After all, when he went to visit Saudi Arabia, he came back with billions of dollars. Saudi Arabia is a strategic partner. Saudi Arabia spends hundreds of millions of dollars buying weapons from the United States. Saudi Arabia has oil. And now Aramco, by the way,
IPO, right.
IPO is going public, and I guarantee you, U.S. companies and investors are going to pour millions of dollars, billions of dollars there. So it's very clear. Like, to me, it's the parallel to Israel. They cannot do anything wrong. I mean, they'll try to. And by the way, it's not like Donald Trump loves the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos.
No.
So why go against them? And they are trying to destroy his enemy, Jeff Bezos, and destroy the Washington Post, all because, I mean, do you think Donald Trump cares about the human rights and the violations and what's happening to the people in Yemen?
No. I mean, Donald Trump was actively critical of Jeff Bezos, actively critical of Amazon, tried on many occasions, we forget about this, to undermine some of the business dealings of Amazon, completely trashed on Twitter the Washington Post on multiple occasions. So all of these, what seem to be strange bedfellows, are really just strategic individual partnerships, not among states, Jamal. We're talking about individual relationships between Donald Trump, MBS, and some of these other actors.
You're listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM, and I want to also welcome our viewers on Facebook Live, which bring me to the subject to Facebook, because I think this is also it's connected, the influence of foreign powers, not only governments. We've seen, I just tell you one thing, like on Facebook throttles any information about Palestine.
Don't get me started. They've been doing that for years.
This is, I can say, I'm an eyewitness of this or I'm not eyewitness, I actually experienced it.
You're a target.
So whenever we have, and then the other thing, why I'm making this connection, because Facebook took down a video that I posted about this Saudi clown, that's what I said, described him, which is,
the one in Jerusalem?
The one who went on a propaganda tour to Jerusalem,
right,
and irritated the people there, and they were really angered by him, by his presence there. And it had actually over 22 million views on Facebook, and then Facebook took it down.
I wonder why.
I can guarantee you it wasn't a complaint that they received by one person or two people from Saudi Arabia. It had the writing of the Saudi government.
Of course.
The Saudi government, and that's how they succumb to the pressures they succumb to the pressures by Israel. We know that for a fact, because they've targeted also, like I said, Palestinian sites. Now, so the Saudis complain about something, they also succumb to them. And also on Twitter itself recently, they shut down Al-Quds. It's a news site from Jerusalem.
Al-Quds, not Al-Quds Al-Arabi, just
Al-Quds. Al-Quds News.
Yeah, Al-Quds
there's an
News.
article about it. You could find an article about it on Electronic Intifada. But basically this, I think, they had at least over a million followers, provided real-time coverage of what's going on the ground, and then it just, boom, shut its account, totally took it down. And then who do you think complained about it?
Well, absolutely, Jamal. We know who complained about it. The government of Israel complained about it. Just like MBS directly calls, to Mark Zuckerberg and says, we want you to shut down this video that's getting 22 million, hits about a critic of Saudi Arabia. I mean, let's be real. These giant internet firms are willing to sell their souls, if not the personal data of their subscribers, to any state actor. And it's been demonstrated time and time again that when you see Mark Zuckerberg going to Congress and going to D.C. and saying that he really cares about privacy and protection of individual users, nobody believes you anymore, Mark. No one believes that Facebook is there to save and secure and take care of its individual subscribers. It's clear that it's...
Well, they've already admitted that they have actually had been hacked, and the information about subscribers,
right,
millions of them.
But they just admitted yesterday, or at least there was an expose yesterday, Jamal, that said that Facebook was giving away private user data to the highest bidder. Unfortunately, this comes back to Amazon, that Amazon was actually paying and having access to private user data on Facebook for a price. So basically, contrary to what Mark Zuckerberg has been saying and Sheryl Sandberg has been saying, your private data from Facebook is for sale to the highest bidder. And, if you believe otherwise, you're living in a fantasy world to think that your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your WhatsApp account, your Instagram account, whatever your social digital media is for sale, guaranteed. You're listening to Arab Talk here on KPOO in San Francisco, 89.5 FM. This is Arab Talk with Justin Jamal. We're broadcasting on Facebook Live. And Jamal, just to bring it home, they have throttled Arab Talk on Facebook Live too.
They did.
So, we might as well call it what it is. We have been throttled on multiple occasions from the distribution of Arab Talk on Facebook Live. We'll continue to air this story. We'll continue to follow all the story about how bad state actors are using these social media giants to target their opponents. So, but anyways, we're going to follow this story.
Absolutely.
We have to follow it. And this thread to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi it has ripple effects through almost everything.
We're going to get more information.
Will.
It's just like really, just got to keep digging deeper into it, and then you'll find more and more information, just like we're finding out even more information after the death of Epstein. Just like, a couple of days ago, we had new revelations about...
oh, that's right.
Yeah, about him. So it's not going to go away. Well, the few stories I've been following, Jess. We're shifting gear here.
Are we domestic or international?
This is domestic and international, but I think I thought this was very interesting because we discussed this about Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and how especially Rashida Tlaib was denied entry to Israel when she wanted to take with her a congressional delegation
to Palestine
to have them eyewitness what's going on and come back and report to the rest of Congress. Well, guess what? There was another delegation, and this delegation, I don't know who sponsored it. Could have been AIPAC or somebody else. I have to dig deeper, or could be another organization, which excluded, of course, Rashida Tlaib,
Ilhan
Omar and others, and had other representatives. And one of the representatives who was on this trip is Representative Andy Levin from your home state
of Michigan. Yes.
So he was there, and he got to meet with Israeli officials and wanted to go to see with his own eyes what's going on in the West Bank. He didn't go to Gaza, but he managed to go to the West Bank. So he started reporting on this through Twitter. See, this is how powerful Twitter is.
That's what I mean.
Everyone uses Twitter, from the President of the United States to members of Congress to journalists and so forth. And he started to report on it. And then he started with this tweet. And of course, Andy Levin, he's also worth mentioning that he's also Jewish American congressman.
Right.
And then his first tweet said, yesterday, I traveled to the southern West Bank, including the Palestinian village of Susia, which I've been there many times, which the Israeli government has destroyed twice and currently denies access to water.
Wait, this is from Congressman Levin
Congressman Levin.
is tweeting about this?
Yeah, and so, boom, bombshell. The Israeli government likes to have you come to this Hasbara tour and go back and say Israel is the
best.
only democracy in the Middle East.
Right.
They have the most moral army. And this congressman, he started his trip by being neutral, really, just like let me see what's going on with my own eyes. That was his first tweet. And then you should see the storm that followed on Twitter.
Right.
You know, you could actually look at it if you go to his Twitter page. It's at Rep Andy Levin, and you'll go to that tweet. And then he goes on. He says, when people start like replying to him, he said, "Yet we watched the government utility right before our eyes lay in pipes right across the village's land to deliver tap water to an illegal Israeli outpost nearby."
Representative Levin said that?
Yeah, he's going, and this is
Wow.
just a day ago. Then he goes on, right?
Wow.
They're basically shutting off water on a Palestinian village, destroying it for the second time, running water. He didn't use the word apartheid.
Well, he
But I'm just
described
saying,
it.
he's describing
He's
it.
describing
saying
apartheid.
they're destroying the village. They're basically cutting off water on it, and then they're running water
Pipes.
lines to an illegal settlement. He doesn't stop there. And then he goes on. It was simply incredible. As angry as the situation made me, the resilience of the Palestinian villagers left an even stronger impression.
Wow.
So those three tweets, and again, this is someone who was allowed in, his Jewish American congressman. He's from the same state of
Michigan.
which is the same state of
Rashida
Rashida
Tlaib,
Tlaib, who was denied because of her Palestinian roots to visit her grandmother.
Right.
He was allowed in, and he saw with his own eyes the atrocities, and I'm so proud of him that he came back and just said it the way it is.
That's impressive.
And so kind of like blew off this whole facade that Israel tries to create by inviting these congressmen and congresswomen on these paid trips to go back and report to say that Israel is the victim, and they're just fantastic.
Let me ask you, Jamal, I'm curious, did the Hasbara machine, do you have any of the tweets from the Israeli Hasbara machine?
Oh, yeah, because you can go to and see, but actually he had a lot of support. I can go there and say, thank you for sharing the truth. People are saying, from all over the country, thank you for going to Palestine. It's really good that you were witnessing what you have, etc., etc., etc. But also he created this internal storm within AIPAC, that and even J Street, because J Street also had recently a conference,
Right.
And even though they came for the very first time, J Street, they did not follow the rules. They had people like instead of just saying we need to support Israel, they had people during the conference say that we should hold Israel accountable.
Right.
And also we've heard now from Bernie Sanders saying that we must, if Israel continues on this path, maybe we should cut aid to Israel and pass some of this aid to the starving people in Gaza. And I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
So there is a major shift, I would say.
No, I think
A
that's
major shift within the Democratic Party.
well, some parts of the Democratic Party.
Some parts, but that I think it cannot be ignored. And then when you have someone like, a very credible person like Andy Levin go there, see with his own eyes, reports the truth, is not afraid. This is the thing. He was not afraid
To tell the truth.
Right. And did not care about retaliation by AIPAC, because AIPAC is the organization behind, muzzling the truth. And anyone who we know that, just read Congressman Findley's book.
Right.
Former, he's deceased now. Congressman Findley wrote a
Right.
book called They Dare to Speak.
Right. They dare to speak.
And he documented this way back, I think, in the 80s.
Yeah, it was in the
was
80s.
was this book, but basically talking about the power of AIPAC. That when he himself, who was very neutral and started to say the truth about what's happening in Palestine and question U.S. aid to
He got
to
voted
Israel,
out.
he got kicked out basically.
So listen, two stories really quick. We'll come back to this one. It's not fair to say the Democratic Party has shifted, Jamal. Some elements of the Democratic Party have shifted. The more progressive wing of the Democratic Party has shifted, and that has trickled down to Bernie Sanders, and now I would say to Elizabeth Warren, who are able to say things like, we need to hold Israel accountable, things like that. But we're not quite there yet to say the broader Democratic Party, because you still have the Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, which includes Joe Biden, who are very much, haven't changed when it comes to their unflagging, uncritical, unaccountable support for Israel. So we'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah, but these were tabooed subjects and red lines that are getting crossed time and time again.
But we remember what happened last time in the 2016 election when the question when on the Democratic convention, Jamal, where so many people were shut down because of the resolution they wanted to pass to basically criticize Israel and try to hold them accountable. We'll see what happens in 2020. Speaking of Israel and American citizens, Jamal, we need to mention the story of Omar Shaker. Omar Shaker is, I think he's the area representative for Human Rights Watch. They have an office in the occupied in occupied Palestine. Omar Shaker is an attorney. He works for Human Rights Watch. They are the ones that document human rights violations. And just to be fair, Jamal, they document human rights violations either by the Israelis or the Palestinian Authority. So they're pretty much an equal opportunity NGO.
That's right.
Omar Shaker has gotten tremendous amount of respect and prestige all over the world because of his work in occupied Palestine. The Israelis were looking for a way, as you know, to get him removed from his job at Human Rights Watch. So what did they do? They dug up some tweets from 2007, maybe a little bit later, maybe a few years after that, where he was saying things about holding Israel accountable and using BDS as a way to hold Israel accountable because it's nonviolent, it's political, so on and so forth. Well, guess what? Using the new law, the Israeli government decided to see if they could ban Omar Shaker, an American citizen with a legitimate work visa, and ban him and basically deport him.
Well, on Tuesday, just the Israeli Supreme Court ordered Human Rights Watch, basically, and their representative, by the way, Omar Shaker, to leave the country within a maximum of 20 days. So he has been notified since Tuesday that he had 20 days.
He's deported.
To leave the country. Well, they told him on Tuesday he had 20 days to leave. And then what happened?
What did happen?
Well, I mean, they put an order of deportation.
No, that's what I mean. They are going to deport him. This went up to the Supreme Court. So this is the Israeli Supreme Court. Omar Shaker had great Israeli attorneys actually trying to defend his right to remain on a legitimate, valid work visa, working in occupied Palestine. The Human Rights Watch has an office. I believe they have an office in Tel Aviv as well as in Ramallah, Jamal. The point being is that this was working its way up through the Israeli judicial system. It finally got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said you can actually deport this person despite his legal right to be here.
Well, the main accusation
He's a BDS supporter.
Exactly. They said that that he had been active for years in the BDS movement,
Which is not true.
and actively supported boycotting Israel. That's kind of
But you know what they actually said, Jamal? They said he was one of the international leaders of the BDS movement, which is complete rubbish, a complete fabrication. This is the accusation that the Israeli government levels against all of the supporters. If what the Israelis are saying is accurate, then there must be millions of leaders of the BDS movement, because Omar Shaker was really no different than any other person of conscience who believed in nonviolent confrontation of Israeli apartheid and believed, just like they did in South Africa, that you could use BDS to help hold the Israeli government accountable for its human rights violations. But Jamal, that happened. These tweets are over 10 years old.
Well, I mean, regardless, I mean, this is the thing is, you know, Israel and its supporters, they have to kind of make up their mind. Is Israel a democracy or it's not?
Well,
I mean, if you're deporting people because of something they said
10 years
or
ago.
tweeted,
Yeah, 10 years ago.
or they don't agree with the military occupation of Israel of the West Bank and the inhumane siege of Gaza, then you cannot enter the country for many of
You're
them.
going to get deported.
You're going to get deported.
Or you won't be allowed to come in.
Exactly. So this is even if you read the Israeli media, and not all of it, stay away from, I would say, the Sheldon Adelson media.
Right.
You know, you'll find a lot of debate, people, Israelis, contesting and saying this is ridiculous. This is, if you're going to start kicking out of the country human rights organizations, getting rid of, Israel does not want UNRWA. They don't want the United Nations refugee.
But Human Rights Watch is
represented
different.
there. They don't want Human Rights Watch.
Yeah.
They don't want like CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists, basically.
Right.
They don't want anyone to keep a tab on its violations, international law violations. What good it is? I mean, who else do they want to keep in the country?
I hope Andy Levin is listening to Arab Talk, Jamal, because what I'm hoping Congressman Andy Levin from my home state of Michigan, the great state of Michigan, will do is continue tweeting the truth, number one, but I hope he takes another trip to occupied Palestine, goes to the West Bank, goes see if he can get into Gaza, because his voice will be able to be heard in ways that Ilhan Omar's will not, Rashida Tlaib's will not.
Just any decent human being that I have spoken to, or I have met by coincidence,
who's been there,
and
says
went
the
there
same
even
thing.
with a whole wrong impression or even a neutral impression, and saw the truth with his own eyes.
they came to the same conclusion.
They come to the same conclusion.
Always.
They never will. And this is what Israel is afraid of. Israel does not want to have any person with strong moral convictions, any person who respects human rights and dignity, to visit the West Bank and see with his or her own eyes the facts on the ground, that they themselves, even from within, I say from within the Israeli society, some of them are saying enough.
Well,
We're seeing the effects of the occupation.
but the Israeli government doesn't care about Israeli citizens living there.
No, they want the surrogates right here in the United States
exactly
to keep writing, to keep forcing and coercing the U.S. taxpayer to keep writing that check.
Exactly.
That's all what they care about.
So, by the way, Jamal, what we're seeing, this is the real reason why people are rebelling against Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, because Elizabeth Warren's stance on Palestine is maybe not as strong as Bernie Sanders, but it's very, very strong.
It has been shifting.
It's been shifting,
Or evolving, I would say.
evolving to her credit. Is it a surprise that everybody is now attacking Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders? They want the establishment because Joe Biden.
Oh, Joe Biden, and I'm not making yet, we're not going to, this is Arab Talk, we don't make endorsements on the air, but
Don't say it. We can't endorse.
Can't, but I'm just telling you, Joe Biden, his record
On Israel is terrible.
Not on Israel, on Palestinian human rights.
Terrible.
Is terrible.
No.
You just look at every statement that he said and every, he bragged of being basically a Zionist. I mean, he just said that you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. Like,
Yeah,
he
was
wants
proud
to
of
be
it. He
more
wants to be a
Zionist than
Zionist.
the Zionists.
Basically.
And support the occupation, support oppression, and then play this smoke and mirrors and
Right.
say, we support the two-state solution.
Which he doesn't.
No, he does. He does support
But the Israeli view of the two-state solution.
But their own, exactly, Netanyahu's interpretation
The apartheid solution.
of that.
But here's the problem, Jamal.
It's terrible.
Here's the problem. The the Israeli AIPAC and the Israeli surrogates here and their bots and their social media operation and their Hasbara machine, they did this in 2008. They did it in 2012. They did it in 2016. They will divide the Democratic Party on this question because they don't care.
They don't care if the Democratic Party
implodes
as long as they have someone in the White House who supports the
100%.
occupation.
So
then Donald Trump is their man.
Of course. That's what I'm saying, Jamal. I'm sorry we're going to end this show with my ongoing prediction, unfortunately, which is
It was my ears right
which is
here.
turning out to be truer and truer that Donald Trump is going to win.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you on this, and I'm going to say he's not.
Okay.
So let's make the $1 bet.
We can't bet an amount of money, but we'll...
One coffee bet.
One coffee bet.
That you're saying Donald Trump is going to win, and I say I don't think so.
Okay, and on that breaking news here from Arab Talk, we thank you for joining us here on Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM here in beautiful San Francisco. We're also streaming live on Facebook Live at Jamal Dajani 2. You can get all of our shows, all of our podcasts at ArabTalkRadio.com, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.